Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to show you how I design a monogram, and I am on Cricut Design Space. So the first thing I want to do is do text and do the middle letter, which is going to be the last name. And then I'm just typing in mono to pull up my monogram fonts. I have 3 of them. Okay, now I'm going to tell you where I got them. Somebody's going to ask. People will ask me in the comments, and I know they don't watch the video if they ask, or they got it muted. There is a chance that you have it muted because I do that sometimes, like the TV's on, somebody's watching TV and I can't hear. Anyway, I got one of them from FABRICA. I got one off Etsy, and then another one I was gifted from another channel for being a member of that channel. Okay, so that's where the 3 different ones came from. You can search FABRICA and Etsy for monogram fonts. You are going to have to purchase one though. Okay, so first I did like I said, I did the C for the last name, and now this is going to be the first letter of the first name, and I made that a 1/2 inch shorter. And then when you're ready to do the middle initial, just copy the L, because that's already sized height-wise where you want it. So I've got the C a 1/2 inch taller than the L and the R. I think that looks good. You can go even smaller than that. You can go bigger than that. Whatever you think looks good, do that. I wouldn't say that there is a specific size that you have to go by. Do what you think looks good. For me, every monogram, that's just a guide I go by height wise, and I got that from a friend. I think it was TJ that taught me that, because I have the worst time with monograms. I hate monograms. I hate designing them because I can never get them to look perfect. I can never get them to look like I really want them to look. I can spend hours like messing with it and never be completely happy with it. So I have to just do the best I can and say that looks good. Okay, so after you get it where you want it, then you want to weld it together, or that's what I like to do. I would suggest at least attaching it. I like it welded together because I want where every one of those curves touches, I want those to weld together. I want it to cut out in one cohesive unit. So that's why I weld it together. But you want to at least attach it, because once you get it sized and you start adjusting things, once you get all the individual letters sized, you want it to be a whole group. That way, if you're trying to make it bigger or smaller or offset it or whatever, you're going to make sure that they stay where you want them. Each letter stays where you want it, and it stays the size that you want it. So don't leave them as individual letters. So what I do is I offset just a little bit, and I'm going to try a couple different offsets. You can see the sizes I'm going with. I want to make it just a little bit thicker. Now if you're doing this top layer in glitter HTV, you can probably leave it alone, and because you can weed it and it should be fine. But if you're doing this on glitter cardstock, you're going to want to offset it a little bit, because if you look at how fine that original, all those little curls are, that's going to be very difficult to cut out on cardstock, especially glitter cardstock. So whatever you want to look at, whatever material you're using to cut this out at. So if you want to make it just a little bit thicker like I did, that is going to make that, see how it's not a huge difference, but it's enough to make a difference in cutting it out on glitter cardstock. So now I'm going to do the real offsets, and I suggest that you do at least 3 layers when you're offsetting a monogram. I like to go anywhere from 3 to 5 layers. It really depends on the price of the mum, the price of the monogram, what they're willing to pay for. If it's a huge mum that, costs a lot, yeah, go a bunch of layers. But if it's a small mum and, it just depends. It's always about cost and size of the mum. I always just determine it on that. And so I'm doing different colors for the different layers so you can see what I did. And again, when I do the offsets, the real offsets like this, I don't have a specific size offset that I do for each one of them, for each layer. Now here I'm going to go ahead and go into contour and take out all those little cuts. You can leave some of them, or you know, if some are very, very fine cuts, I would go ahead and mark those off on the contour or hide them, because they're just going to be a single cut and it's going to look weird. It won't look good. So if you like it like that, solid like that, do that. If you want some cuts on that third layer, then leave some of those contours. Again, you may have to change your offsets to different amounts. It's really just determines what you're doing, what you're putting this on, what size flower, blah, 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 how you want it to look. But I do like the last layer, the bottom layer, to be a solid piece. Otherwise, you'll have petals coming through from the flower. They'll come through those cuts and it just doesn't look good. So do a solid for the back, which is black on mine. The top layer and the bottom layer I've got as black. But you could do as many offsets, as many layers as you want, honestly. But I would suggest at least 3 to look really good. Now you can size these for the flower, and I'm going to show you 2 different sizes, like what I would do for a 7.5 and what I would do for a 6.5. Sometimes, you know, I will use like the 6.5 inch flower as a guide, 6.5. But sometimes I'll go more than that or a little less than that. It depends on whatever design I'm working on. You just need to keep in mind, and I'm going to show you this, the very left side of the L, you got to remember that it's measuring from that very left side all the way to the very right side. So even though it's cutting out at 7.5 inches, it's still going to be smaller than the flower, if that makes sense, because you're measuring from the very, very tip of the bottom of the L all the way to the furthest part on the R. So it's not going to be a huge thing. So sometimes I will go bigger. It depends on how big I want it to be on the flower. So use your flower size as your guide on how big to make it, and it's a safe bet to say if it's a 6.5 inch flower to go 6.5. You know, it's going to cut out smaller than what you think it is in most cases, unless it's a really big design. But when you're dealing with like letters like this, or you know, like a mascot or something that has a really fine point on one side or the other, it's going to come out smaller than what you think it is. So I would go at least, you know, like the size of the flower, and a lot of times I go a little bit bigger. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. Please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, like, share, comment. Please be kind with those comments. And happy crafting, happy mom making, everyone. I'll catch you all on the next one. God bless.